Welcome to Prague. I think this bench might be very, very telling for where we are. Also very telling, but at the same time very discreet, this diplomatic letterbox that I found right by the entrance. If you know how it is used, do tell. I am very curious. And I love this display, which means that you don't have to tilt your head backwards to know where the next departure is. Taking off almost immediately on a hot summer day in July, leaving Prague and landing in Stockholm, and I'm very happy to be back in Prague very soon. It is so rich in history, and this time I only visited one castle. I had a very tight schedule, so I was traveling from Burgas to Düsseldorf to Thessaloniki to Brussels, and then from Brussels to Prague, and now to Stockholm. And what I like about visiting castles, it's on one hand that you get to see the history really physically in front of you. It is a building that contains so many stories. It could be carvings on the walls, like I was here, signed 1789, or other parts which are even more clearly significant. And knowing that one part of one castle affected a castle somewhere far away makes it even more interesting to then visit not only the castle where you are at now, but also following up in the best of worlds the next day at this other castle and then see how the history is connected in between. Maybe one family moved from one of the castles to the other castle, or maybe a war forced the introduction of something in particular, that maybe the castle was turned into a hospital, or the like. The differences are, of course, many. So seeing this history when in a castle is magnificent. I really like it. If it so happens that you have a dog and you would want to spare your dog's ears from the fireworks that tend to take place on New Year's Eve, then I have an idea for you. Well, it is a bit late and you might know this already, but what I'm referring to is the possibility to reserve a hotel spot near an airport, because firecrackers and fireworks are particularly not allowed in the vicinity of that place. So there was an article in the Swedish media about Landvetter flygplats airport. So Landvetter is west coast near Gothenburg, and 400 dog owners already have reserved a spot. When I say already, I'm recording this in November, so that is a good reference for you to know. Another dog owner I used to know usually went to the forest. He had a cottage there and was sure that nobody would be popping any firecrackers or have something similar there. Other news, not dog related, but space related. There is a satellite that the United Kingdom sent to space in 1969, Skynet 1A. That also happens to be the oldest satellite in the possession of the United Kingdom. Hasn't been used for years, but the news are that somebody decided to move it, and it wasn't the UK. It was found hovering at 36,000 kilometers, a normal height above the Pacific Ocean, but it was at the wrong spot. So the question is, and no expert has been able to answer this yet, why would someone decide to move a satellite that is not even in function? More news regarding the sky this time. When I think of the profession of a skydiver, I would have said that primarily they work within the armed forces for sure. So that is a task which is very particular, and I would not have thought of it as a profession to begin with. More likely for me, when I think of a skydiver, I think of a person who does so because they want to show that they're brave. This is maybe a gift that they were given as an adventurous ticket, by someone who wanted to celebrate their 40th or 50th birthday, and then they do so with the help of the professionals after some training. But then I read the news about this skydiver that has much more versatility to what he does. It doesn't exclude in the article that he might be part of the armed forces otherwise when he does not do this project, which I will tell you about. And that was spreading seeds from the air. That's amazing. So to sum up, what happened was that in Brazil, a skydiver called Luigi Cani, I hope I got his pronunciation right, and after a lot of permissions to do it the right way, he was skydiving with a big box full of seeds, and the permissions we needed not for his diving in particular, but to make sure that the box was degradable, that the seeds would spread the way it was meant to be. Of course, the seeds that would be spreading must be fresh and viable, so when they were released from the sky, they had a 95% germination rate. The seeds were collected from nearby forests and then they were let go at a height of 6,000 feet. Switching our perspective to down below, right underneath us, this dark patch actually is one of the largest islands of Sweden. It is called Öland. This island is long, about 25,000 people live there. At the two ends there is a lighthouse. In the south, where we are now, moving upwards, it is called Långe. In the north, at the opposite end, the lighthouse is called Långe Erik. Lång in Swedish means tall. Jan and Erik are common Swedish boys' names. Jan is probably derived from a chapel nearby called Kapella Beati Johannes. This lighthouse was built in 1784 and needed charcoal to be lit up. It is 42 meters tall and the tallest lighthouse in all of Sweden. At the opposite end, it is not known how Långe Erik got its name. It was built in 1845 and since 1976 it is fully automatic. Both lighthouses can be visited. When you pay for the ticket to Långe Jan, you are supporting the local ornithologists. At the middle of this island, there is a bridge leading to mainland Sweden. The winds are sometimes so strong here that the bridge is closed off for safety reasons. The bridge leads to Kalmar, a city with a fortified castle near which used to be the Danish border in the 13th century. And the sky! I love this view. Look at the blue, so beautiful nuances. And again, think outside of the box that the pixels provided by my camera are giving you. Soon we'll be flying into the common thing that we have up here, the white thing known as the clouds, and we'll begin descending towards Stockholm. An ordinary landing, just on time, nothing special, but it did happen to me just recently when I was traveling, when we were onboarding very, very quickly because there were so few of us and no differentiation, because usually they would start by calling for Group 1 boarding, now Premium Fast Track members and Diamond Priority groups and Gold Bonus Priority members and Star Loyalty Premium. I don't know all the names, but it just seems sometimes a bit ridiculous that you have to call out for members by the name of the membership and they can board, but that did not happen. So there was one person who had one of these lovely, shall I say, titles, and then they said everybody else can board, and we did so very, very quickly. And when we landed, we touched ground and were off the plane half an hour before predicted time. I really like when we make semi-soft circles close to the ground and we get to see these green nuances that remind of the season. This time we will be landing at a far away landing part of Arlanda, so the taxation time, the time that you just drive the aircraft without flying, will be quite long. And during that time we'll be crossing a bridge underneath which there is an ordinary road for cars. And nearby that you will see a quick flash, because we still pass quite quickly, an old aircraft. That old aircraft is a jumbo jet from 1976 of the model 474-200, and it is used as a conference arrangement and as well as a place where you can book a room to stay the night. So when it was for sale about 2 decades ago, an owner who already has a hotel in Uppsala, a city nearby, decided to expand his business, and when he bought this, he had to remove 450 chairs and sanitize the entire aircraft and then remade it. So you can actually have your conference inside an old aircraft and have a view of the airport. And again, it will flash by very quickly, so I have to point it out to you again when we pass it. My most recent experience at Arlanda is, as usual, seeing many crew members leaving the aircraft to either change to another route or leaving the aircraft because that is the end of their shift, so they're walking towards the hotel. And something that was unusual this time was that it was a particularly young crew, and one of the girls was holding a young man by his hand, and he was not wearing a uniform, so clearly they were a couple, and it was just so sweet to see how much they liked each other. I do not believe that this is something that happened during just one flight, that it was instant moment of love, that they just had met at the aircraft where she was the air hostess. I do not think that, because they seemed more deeply in love than that. So they somehow had timed to meet up there at the airport, and I'm just so happy for them. I know of another love story that kind of happened at the airport. So the person in question was working 2 jobs, and she actually met her future husband at the other job where he was just passing by, and she recognized him. And then she was working as an air hostess at a small airport in Sweden, and when he was passing by to check in, she said, "Hello, there you are," and he recognized her. And after that, they went on a date, and then it was them forever since. So both quick and long, because had they not met that second time and at that airport, it would not have happened. Do you know of other love stories that happened somehow in connection to an airplane or at the airport? Do share. I would be very happy to hear. And for that matter, of course, also friendship stories. I would love to hear if you may be connected with someone that you were sitting next to, or maybe there was something special where you shared fries at the restaurant while waiting for the aircraft, which was already delayed, and then you stayed in touch ever since, and then you made great friends. There are so many different ways to make friends. I was sitting next to a man on the train, and he told me his entire life story. He was about double my age, and he said that he told me this only because he was a stranger and he knew that we would never meet again. That's why he could share. And that is not the friendship stories I'm asking for here. I'm asking for someone that you are still in touch with or were in touch with for a long time, and that if you had not met at the aircraft or at the airport or somehow connected to a journey, you would not have met otherwise. That will be really fun to hear as well. And did you notice that rainbow that appeared in the far distance now? If not, you can go back and look in the video. Something that I learned recently is that when aircrafts have been produced, they are ready for takeoff. It's like sometimes you see vans with long, long trailers and cars standing on them, and then the cars are taken to a car shop, and then you can shop your car from there. And how do you take the car with you? Well, you get into the car and you drive home. That's as simple as that. And you can do something similar with aircrafts. So there are pilots coming up to the workshop, and they pick up their aircraft by flying from there to the destination where this aircraft is supposed to be parked awaiting its next journey, or perhaps they're starting the journey right away. I'm not sure about the protocol here, but it would be really fun to be a pilot and come and pick up an aircraft and fly with it for the first time. I would be happy to get hold such of a pilot and talk to them about that experience, because flying an aircraft which is brand new, that must be really fun. So there is the brand new smell, and then you know that there is not a single crumb anywhere because it's just not been used before. It's like really fun. It's not often that happens. So if you know a pilot who has experienced this, don't hesitate to share. I would be very happy to interview them and hear about this experience. And maybe they have to be 3, maybe they have to be 5, depending on the protocol, I guess, depending on the country and how far they are traveling. And how many times does this happen in the career of a pilot? That would be fun numbers. Okay, now we are about to do a landing. And of course, everybody is buckled up and the trays are up and the air hostesses are also sitting down at the particularly assigned chairs. This reminds me of my favorite safety demonstration. It was done on a very small aircraft when I was flying from Gällivare to Kramfors, and they had some comments, but they said we will show the practicalities in silence, and I just love that, so I wouldn't mind if more aircrafts would take up on that. That experience with a silent safety demonstration, that comes from my recent flight when I was flying from Gällivare to Kramfors in northern Sweden, and that was very interesting. Also when I was flying back, because I was the only passenger at that airport. The airport is quite small, so I had the time to chat with the airport staff, and that is when they told me that actually it is the length of an aircraft that affects how much staff there has to be at an airport. So the Fokker 50, which is not where we are seated for this video, being the size of 25.20 meters in length, requires having 4 staff on ground at the airport. Arlanda airport is not the first airport in the Stockholm area. The older airport is actually Bromma flygplats, which is much more closer to the city. You might wonder what Arlanda means. For my part, I used to think that of course it's a clever name because landa means to land. R must be reference to air, but it's not. The name originates from the place, which is in Swedish called Erlinghundra härad, and in a document from 1316 it is referred to as Provincia Arland and is translated to the area of crop fields. There was actually a competition to name this airport place, and that was published in a magazine in 1958, but the name that the jury ended up selecting is based on the proposal by the city name researcher who said that it could be called Arland, and the jury decided to add an A at the end, Arland becoming Arlanda. So, to be generalizing a bit, the place is actually named what it always has been named during the past 700 years. Previously, there used to be a big interest for hot air balloons in Sweden. This is before the aircrafts entered the picture. And in particular, around the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, that interest for hot air balloons was particularly large. An important way to document the city was from above, and there is a picture from a hot air balloon made by Carl Johan Billmark in 1868 that very much looks like a photo, though of course you can tell that it is a drawing. There is a link to this drawing in the description of this video. Before Arlanda, there was Bromma Airport, which was introduced in 1930. But before Bromma, there was Lindarängen in the area of Frihamnen, a port. They had between 1,300 and 2,400 flights per year, and it was very frequently used in the 1930s, in the early years, and then there were flights until the 1950s. The first flight in Stockholm happened in 1909, and in 1921 a regular route was established between Estonia and Sweden. And Bromma Airport was the first airport in Europe with an asphalted runway. We are also now approaching the jumbo jet I mentioned, where you can have a conference. This aircraft stands out from the other aircrafts we are now passing by, because as you will see at the rear end turn towards us, there is a ladder leading up to the entrance, which I think is one of the ways to enter it. I hope there are more. As I have this year experienced staying in 3 different hotels, all in the Arlanda area. One of the hotels was a bit far away and has a shuttle bus which takes you from the airport to that place, which is not too far away and yet not too close. And when taking that shuttle bus, we were also passing by underneath a bridge exactly when an aircraft was above us. So I have also combined footage what it looks like when we are on the bridge, but from the perspective of someone being in a car approaching that bridge from below. For the curious, the hangar that was part of the Lindarängen airport still remains today, but it is a historically protected building, so it cannot be removed that easily, though there are plans presented to find out if it is possible to transform the area into a living area, so building apartments. As for the creation of Arlanda, though it didn't happen until much later, the investigations to find out the possibility to create an airport began already in 1943. I have a proposal. When you click all those options that are available when purchasing an aircraft ticket online, it should be a possibility to also download a track of history, so you can listen to some sort of a podcast, could be without presenters, be very impersonal, presenting information about the airport which you're leaving and the one that you're coming to, and of course the history of the airport that you might be crossing when changing aircrafts in the middle of your journey, if that is part of your route. In particular, this should be available on aircrafts which travel far distances, and when you sometimes can click on a screen in front of you and select a movie to watch. There should also be tracks which tell you about the history of the aircraft company, of the airports. That should be just fantastic. Did you also see this video that this Irish comedy trio published recently? Foil Arms and Hog is the name of the group. They have a sketch, or maybe you saw the live show, because they perform around the world, which is about two suitcases traveling. So the two comedians enter the stage and they wear two suitcases, and one of them is upset and says, "Did you hear them? Did you hear the airport officer saying what he was saying?" Yes, Mary, I did. He said I was overweight." There are complaints about that. And they have a lovely interaction with the audience. So that could be fun to watch. Surely you haven't missed their other sketches, which is passing different immigration border tests. So there is one comedian, always with the back to the audience, interviewing two other comedians, and they ask questions and reply to them in a funny and historically twisted way. So in one of the sketches, they even try to get a visa to travel into space, and then they're asked what is the reason for the travel, and they go like, "Oh, just a change of atmosphere, just wanting to decompress a bit." So there are both funny puns and also historical references. Like in the classical is, what is the most famous wine? And of course, wine could be both a beverage and it also can be complaint. So then they go for the complaint. Less than 2 minutes now, and we will come to a standstill at Arlanda Airport. Curious as always, I'm happy to know, where are you traveling next? Do share in the comments. And if you're using the Wi-Fi services in air still and watching this video, I'm very happy to hear where you're traveling to now. Also curious to know, what is your dream destination and what is your next destination? One of my dream destinations is based on an article which I read, that somebody has said that the paradise on earth is Kashmir. Anyone who's been to the northern part of India knows that it is so beautiful that you will never forget. And of course, pictures from the area are very difficult to Google, so it is really me relying on information from people who've been there and shared that, and that you need a guide when you navigate through the untouched landscape. So that will be very wonderful to visit one day. And you, what about you? Of course, if you already have been to your dream destinations, I'm very happy to hear that too. What was it like? Was it as you expected it? What was different? And what was the destination? Was it a village? Was it a place that you wanted to visit because your family originates from there? Or was it a recommendation from a friend or a stranger? I used to have a friend who loved visiting all the cities that were named the European culture capitals, and there are a few every year, and that really makes the city preparing itself for all the visitors. So there are more activities that year, of course. So that is something I can recommend if you haven't done that journey yet.